Hey, performers. This is probably not going to be one of my normal videos like you're used to seeing. But for me, I want to talk about this because it's almost therapeutic. And I want to talk about a situation that has happened to me personally in this last week. I want to talk about what makes a really great bandmate. And the reason for that is out of a very painful situation. My main band that I work with, we have a bass player named Dan who has been with the band for longer than I have, and I've known him for about 4 years now. And Dan was in an accident about 3 weeks ago, and about 48 hours ago, he succumbed to his injuries and he passed away. And he was just one of those guys that you really, really enjoy playing music with him because he's not only a fun musician to enjoy a show with, but he was just an all-around great guy. And we became close friends over those 4 years and played together in some really amazing places. Like he was at one of the gigs that I did at Notre Dame Stadium. This just got me thinking, what really makes a great bandmate? Because my friend Dan, he was one of the best. I'm going to miss him a lot. So I want to talk about why Dan was such a great bandmate and what you can look for in your own bandmates going forward, okay? When Dan and I first met, we actually met at a gig. We were put on a show together, and I remember this so vividly. It was a 7-piece band that was part of our group that I play with all the time now, but it was when I first started working with that group. Out of those 7 people, I had only met 2 of them at the time. So I was one of the newbies. I remember thinking this is either going to go really, really well, or it's going to be a train wreck. And we played that show and it was awesome. The crazy part about that is it was for a wedding and you would never have known that we had never played together. We sounded really good as a group and we pulled off a show that sounded like we had been playing together for a long time. That was my first impression of Dan, is that we were pros. We went into a situation together, having not met previously. We basically had dinner together and got to know each other. And the show went off really, really well. There were 400 people at that wedding, I believe. And the bride and groom sent this rave review about us. They loved the show. They had a great time. And so did we. And that was my start of my friendship with Dan. When I first met Dan, I didn't know how to take his personality because he came off a little bit blunt, a little bit rude, maybe a little bit antisocial, but really he was really a gentle giant, like this really nice guy underneath that I just had to get to know. That bluntness, that slightly antisocial side to him, that was actually just his humor. He was that kind of guy. And once I got to know him, I found out he was a really incredible person underneath all of that. And I guess the lesson I want to point out here is that when you first start working with people in bands, you might see one side of the person, but as you get to know them, you'll see their true colors. You'll see the real person that they are underneath, whether they have an ego, whether they have a really humble personality, a really giving personality. Bands have this way of bringing out the best and worst out of people. And so you get to see the real person underneath the longer you play with them. As a musician and a bandmate, Dan was the kind of guy who encompassed a lot of the traits that you really want out of a bandmate. Consistent. He showed up on time. He was reliable. You could count on him to do his part of the job. When he had to learn a song, he knew the parts to that song. Remember that this is a group of about 35 people now that work together and cover different gigs together. Most people in that band really, really like working with Dan. And he's going to be sorely missed by pretty much everybody in our group. On stage, he was not the guy that played for himself. He was the guy that was humble. He played to be part of the band. He was the kind of player that wasn't overly flashy with the way he played. And even when he had to solo, he didn't even like to solo that much because he'd rather let somebody else do it. He was the kind of player that makes everyone else just a little bit better. So as a musician and as a bandmate, he's a really, really solid player and a really, really solid human being. He was reliable, and he was consistent, and he did his job for the band. But there are other things about bandmates that really made a guy like Dan special. He was genuinely kind-hearted. He had great humor. He was fun to be on with gigs. He was great in conversation. One of my other bandmates, one of our singers, pointed out yesterday to me that when Dan gave you a compliment, which He didn't give out all the time, but when he did, you could tell that he genuinely meant it. And it was the kind of compliment that made you feel really, really good about yourself and your performances. If he told you you did a good job, I mean, you believed it. And I'm really going to miss working with him. Excuse me, hold on. You know, some of the funny things that I loved about playing gigs with Dan have nothing to do with the music. He was diabetic, and so he was very cautious about how he ate, but he had a sweet tooth for cake. So every time we played a wedding or a corporate event where there was cake there, he was the first guy to find the cake and to get at least one piece. He loved German chocolate cake. We did a corporate show one time where a speech was being given during the dinner portion of the event, and they were serving everything through buffets, and there were these really good prime rib steaks. We got one in our initial meal. Dan and I were still hungry afterwards, and so we went back for not 2, not 3, but we each had 5 prime rib steaks, and we stuffed ourselves at that gig. Those are the kinds of things that I'm going to miss about my friend. When you play in a band, a lot of the time you start off like coworkers. Instead of having a shared job, you have a shared interest in performing music together. It's about getting the job done. It's about, learning your parts, and it's about playing musically together. So you may be friends, you may not be when you first start a band. But as time goes on, as you play with these people over and over again, your true colors come out, good and bad. We tend to show the best of ourselves when we play live music, and we also tend to show the worst of ourselves when we're dealing with other musicians because personalities do conflict and things like that. So when you're looking for bandmates, look for somebody who shows up. Look for somebody who is prepared, they're consistent, they're encouraging, they're going to help to lift you up, and you're going to help to lift them up. Look for somebody who is consistently fun to work with, that you enjoy them as a person, not just as a bandmate. Because a lot of the time, whether you want it to happen or not, bandmates become like family. And just like a lot of family does, you get along great a lot of the time, but you will bicker, you will get on each other's nerves, you'll do things like that because you can't become like brothers and sisters to an extent. So I'm not sure this video makes a ton of sense today, but I do want you all to know that I was very thankful to share the stage and the friendship with my friend Dan. Those gigs that we got to have together were magical moments. We had some amazing times together, and I will remember those moments for the rest of my life. Something that has come out a lot since all of this happened is that a lot of the bandmates have been very emotionally encouraging of each other. There's been a lot of support to one another, giving hugs. There's been a lot of I love yous going on. And I think that that's really important in this kind of situation. And if you have a bandmate like my friend Dan, make sure to tell them how much you appreciate them. Tell them you love them if you want to. Make sure that you are that bandmate who cares about the rest of your band. Make sure they know, because one day you might not have that opportunity. So to my friend Dan and his family, it was a true honor to be a bandmate with you. And I'm going to miss playing with you, friend. And to the rest of you, take care of your bandmates. And we'll see you soon. Take care.